Welcome back to the second part of Data Excellence Stage Sessions. I'll be your host for this afternoon. We have a few more panels and sessions. It's going to be incredibly valuable. So thank you again for coming back. I'm Andra Vadova. I'm the CEO of SafeSpace. We're an AI adoption lab built out of MIT that helps executives and their teams take fast, safe, high ROI decisions. We specialize in turning data, workflows, and human behavior into adoption protocols to help enterprises scale their decision-making process. So our next session actually goes straight to the heart of that. I'm excited to introduce our next panel, the Custom Code Conundrum, Fine-Tuning versus Starting from Scratch, chaired by Dipti Chhatrapati, a leader in data and cloud transformation in the US insurance space. Please join me in welcoming Dipti and our panelists.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm delighted to see such a wonderful audience that we have here today, and thank you for choosing to be part of this session. Let's get started, right? So, we have seen across industries the most pressing challenge for the leader is to deciding when to fine tune, when to engineering, and when to walk away from the customizations entirely. So few majority of us would go for the accuracy in our domain, but very few go for long-term cost or risk or operational burden that comes with it, right? It's like a long-term maintenance nightmare. So today we are going to cut through that noise and focus on what truly matters. My name is Dipti Chhatrapati, and I lead data and cloud transformation for one of the major US insurance here. And I will be discussing and having a conversations with our panelists. So we will keep this fast and focused and brutally practical. So to examine it from every angle, product, engineering, scientific, founder and executive strategy, I'm joined by a remarkable group of leaders here. We have first Lana, and she is a lead data scientist with more than 12 years of experience in machine learning, LLM methodology, and predictive model as well as casual inference. So she brings the deep expertise in interpretability of model and statistical validation, especially in an environment where responsible AI is really non-negotiable. Then we have Lana Makarova. She leads AI initiatives across more than 90 clinical specialties, right? And she oversees enterprise-wide initiatives across all these 90 clinical specialties and more than that, and brings a sharp perspective on trust, adoption, and human-centered AI. Next, we have Kevin, CEO of Meibel, with more than 25 years of experience building scalable systems and developer platforms. He brings the founders clarity on when customizations truly differentiate and when it becomes, long-term technical debt. Next, we have Freddy Castro, CEO of Definity, with 20 years and more than that leading the digital transformation, architecture, and AI modernizations. And he focuses on tuning emerging technology into measurable business outcomes. And at last, we have Yujing, Vice President of Engineering at GEMI Cloud. He leads global engineering strategy, to high performance GPU infrastructure supporting some of the most demanding generative AI workloads in production today. So let's jump start into the heart of this. I want to start by understanding how each of you thinks about the customizations from your unique experiences. So, Kevin, you lead teams through multiple hypergrowth cycles, right? In your world, how do you decide whether customizations actually create a real differentiation, or it's becoming a distraction that quietly turns into long-term technical debt? In other words, if I go more technical, how do you know the problem is in data and retrieval pipelines, or it's a model itself?
Right. Yeah. So thanks for having me today. And I think customizing models today is probably why most people are here at this conference, right? So it's great that you can go out and use a model from OpenAI. You get some responses, but how do you make it yours, right? And how do you run it for your business, and then how do you integrate it into your business, right? So you need to think about a couple things, three things. The context that you're giving the LLM, the control you have around that context, and then the confidence that you have around that output, right? You want to think about those three things pretty much at all times. And I think we all want to customize models in some way, shape, or form, right? That's why we're doing this. And to make AI your own, like, you want to apply your data to that, right? So you need to start looking about, hey, if I'm going to apply my data and I want to make AI my thing, are the important data points I'm giving to the LLM, are they actually showing up in the output? Am I measuring the sparse and dense tokens in a context window that are going in, and I'm seeing them in the output? Like, that's a start, right? And you need to start looking at that. And I think it's very important to take steps to this. Jumping right into fine-tuning your own model, that might be the case that you need to get to down the line, but that's maybe not the first thing that you do, right? The first thing that you do, what we think that you should do at least, is give as little data as you think you should be able to give to get the output. Then you can start tracking. If you start the other way, where you're like, well, I'm just going to give AI access to my entire suite of documents and I'm going to start asking it questions, it becomes a lot harder to understand, hey, what's the decision path? What document influenced another document? How did tokens influence another token? How did the embedding models affect? So I think one of the things you have to think about is start small and think of the 3 C's. Think about the context that you're putting in, the control you have around that context, and then the confidence that you have around that output. And then that'll lead you to understand if your data is being used correctly or not in the AI solution that you need to use.
That's this sharp distinction, Kevin. Thank you so much. Freddy, you work at the intersection of architecture and business outcome, right? So where do you see organizations spending more money into customization that simply never pays back in real business value?
Thank you. Thank you also for having me. So yes, from our customer perspective, what I've seen is that there is this trend, you could call it double X, dos X, and weirdly enough, you get kind of that effect if you just hop on it, which is excitement and experimentation, right? You definitely, in our customers and everyone want to definitely experiment, right? And are excited about AI. But not every scenario calls for it at all, even. So the first warning sign or the first scenario what I've seen that money is spent with no return or minimal return is cases where definitely just you just don't need AI, right? Sometimes you are just shooting to automate a process that you have and are very excited. So you say we should use AI for this, or a model, or maybe even, hopefully not, but it has happened, train a model for it, where what you need is just regular automation and engineering for that kind of problem, right? The second one is if you actually need it and it will bring you value, sometimes because of this excitement, you're just getting along with it and happy with having a slightly better version of the process that you already have. Whether it's already automated or it was manual and now you put AI on it, you're just shooting and putting the bar very low, right? Which is not ideal because it usually doesn't bring the best version of the architecture of the solution that you should have, be it fine-tuned or just data retrieval, etc. Right? So those are kind of the basic scenarios or the trend that I see where excitement and experimentation is just pushing you to go fast, but with no real guideline or create guidelines or even objectives, right? You're not tying a business KPI to what you are trying to achieve. So you're not really demanding. Sometimes you're just investing money on a very expensive training exercise, which is all good, right? Everyone wants to learn how to do these things. But you don't have to put such big money or dollar amount into that. You could achieve that in other ways and just focus your actual initiatives on very, very well funded and tied to KPI scenarios.
Powerful. You are highlighting basically the cost of chasing, custom features, right? That don't move the needle. So thank you so much. Lana, you have supervised AI across more than 90 specialties, right? So you see adoption friction immediately. Where does customizations genuinely improve the trust and adoption? And where does it basically make the product harder for clinicians to use?
Yes. So I think in my kind of various roles, one of the things that I have worked with Mayo Clinic, and they have approximately 100 specialties. So in my experience there, as with any enterprise tool, tools that you kind of design where you have such wide diversity and specialization in an enterprise, you're going to have a friction of, are you really designing one fits for all type of model that's going to fit my needs? Because if you're kind of dealing with, again, a wide variety of different workflows, then you can't really build one solution. And so you're immediately met with, I would say, some judgment towards like, if this is an enterprise solution, will it work for me? And so I think one of the things that you have to kind of embrace early is that you can't just have a one-size-fits-all solution. There could be, again, connecting threads with it, but you do have to kind of work and integrate into the workflows, which requires for you to really understand the domain in which you're operating and understanding what their workflows are in order to even kind of position that solution to be, I would say, to move the needle into their workflows, to provide those efficiencies, to alleviate that physician burden, whatever that solution that you're creating, you're aligning to whatever value. So initially, I think there's some hesitancy towards adoption, I would say, of those solutions, especially if you come from an enterprise-wide angle, because a lot of times they're met with very highly specialized models. So that's one, but also, I would say, so it comes down to the engineering aspects. So the architecture, how are you designing these solutions to be flexible, to provide recommendations that are customizable to different specialties and can sustain that variability and customization. So this is almost like that Netflix effect. You're not building one model, you're building for scale and personalization that can be actually customized to specific workflows. And I'm not talking just about generative AI, I'm talking about other approaches. I think a very common terminology right now in the AI industry is composite AI, where you use multiple kind of techniques to be able to orchestrate together to solve a particular problem. So that's what I advocate for as well. I don't think you can't find one model that's going to fit all of your needs. You do need to kind of think scale, personalization, composite AI to kind of solve those problems. But I would also say that, how you actually build trust in these systems and where there's hesitancy to be able to understand from their perspective, why are they hesitating? Part of it comes down to not understanding how these models work. So it's this black box problem. So you have to kind of instill explainable AI from the beginning. So you want to make sure you work with, your customers, in my case, it was clinicians or clinician groups, to understand how can we provide that transparency in every part of that workflow so that they can understand and know how or whether to trust the system recommendations at that particular scale. So to build trust, you do have to embrace explainable AI from, I would say, the design principles is one of the design principles behind every system. Yeah.
Thank you, Lana. That reminder that usability can make or break the trust is very, very crucial. Yujing, engineering teams often feel the operational consequences first, right? So, what are the hidden or overlooked costs that show up when teams decide to fine tune instead of, relying on strong prompt engineering?
Yeah, I can talk about this in basically two perspectives. One is from the data itself, because a lot of companies or startups, they decided, okay, I'm going to do fine tuning myself. From this moment, I'm going to have the mode by myself, right? Because we have all the data. But when they look back into their actual data, the first thing they realize is, oh shoot, it's actually not trainable. They probably overlooked at their existing data 80% or 90% of use case at this point, because they don't have a systematic way of recording them, storing them, putting them into the needed data structure in order to fine tune the data. So what they ended up into is they will either hire some vendor company to help them clean up the data, or find some data company to come up with the data that they're missing. So that's the first thing, and I've seen them happening a lot of times before they even come to us. The second is from the training infrastructure itself. We are a compute company. We provide GPU clusters for those startups or companies to do their fine-tuning or post-training. The second thing is the reliability of the cluster itself. Sometimes people go to some anonymous GPU providers, or they try to having a cluster by themselves and training from scratch. Then that's basically when a nightmare starts, because GPU system as of today is not as reliable as CPU system. You can never expect, for example, 4 nines in SRA. There is always some incidents in between, and the training infrastructure itself is very delicate and is very error prone. So we've seen a lot of use cases, a lot of customers, before they switch to us, they say that they were trained 4 to 5 days, and suddenly everything breaks. And if they didn't do checkpoint properly, they basically lose 1 or 2 days of GPU times, which could be a lot of money. And basically, this is the second source, I would say, overlooked operational costs from engineering perspective. Because being able to train reliably on a larger scale is really, really important from a business perspective and from engineering perspective.
Thanks, Yujing. That's a great insight from a different perspective altogether. So, Kayla, you work in environment where scientific and precision and compliance have to coexist. So, where have you seen fine tuning improve precision without triggering any validation burdens or any compliance issues?
Yeah, sure. I can speak about this. So the customization or the fine tuning of a model in LLM could actually improve the scientific precision without adding extra regularization when the machine is trained to actually execute same process using the same exact data. I'm going to give the example of loan verification system. So the team has experience running the process. We have the data. We have experience about the rules we execute. We have experience about the metrics calculation. So we can create a context for the machine to learn from. So the machine is able to do exactly the same work. So in a situation like this, the percentage of success is higher. The precision is significant. We can actually reduce the human mistake as long as the machine is dictated to do exactly the same work as a human being and repeat exactly the same process, same data, without moving into the decision making, because the decision making is just a different story and different challenge.
Great, thanks, Lana. Sorry,
Kayla.
Kayla. So I know that's the balance between the compliance and precision that many teams often underestimate, right? So, well, that was our first round of the questions. Now let's move to the second round where we will, go deeper because I want to talk more about what actually works in practice and the red flags that signals the trouble before it becomes more expensive. So Kevin, you have seen custom models scale and fail. So what do you see that actually works when teams try to customize AI for real production use?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think there's almost a more abstract thing about like what works, right? Like, do you have a thing that you need to solve with AI? Or are you using AI to find a problem to solve, right? And I think we see a lot of that right now. We see people thinking they're missing the boat and trying to use AI to get on the boat. Or do you have a defined business goal, right? So it starts like much higher in the organization than just like like technically, can I do this or not, right? Do you have a business outcome? That's number one. If you have a business outcome that you believe that AI is going to help your business drive forward, you are already ahead of probably 70% of the people out in this conference today trying to figure things out. I think that's the most definitive thing. And when we work with customers, we really, really pinpoint on what are you trying to solve, right? What is your outcome? And then if you have that outcome, now you can start digging into, okay, what data do I need to make that outcome happen? I'm not just going to throw all of the data I have at AI and hope and dream that I'm going to be able to pare down the conversations, and then prompt engineering is going to work, and then prompt engineering didn't work, we just need a vector database. So it's not just a vector database, we need some type citation graphs, and we need labeling, and we need attribution, and we need all this other stuff, right? What's the outcome? What's the data that's going to provide that outcome? What are the data sources you need to put together to make that happen? And then start measuring that. Measure everything, right? Measure, are you getting to the outcome that you wanted? I want to make, we're importing, like, we're taking on bill of materials. I want to process 400% more bill of materials tomorrow than I did yesterday. Okay, great. Now out of my AI, how am I measuring, how am I processing those bill of materials? Am I actually accurately getting all the information out there? Is my OCR process working correctly? Is my LLM process? Is my AI? Is my image identification? Is that stuff working correctly? Am I measuring it in the output? So if you go into this process knowing what you want to solve, and then you have a system around, going back to what I said before, understanding your context, understanding how you can control that AI system, and then understanding how you measure the confidence that's coming out of that on the other side, you have a much better track for success, right? And so I think a lot of people I do think out there, if they think they're missing the boat on AI, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not. There's a lot of people who are very chesty about what they're doing with AI, so to speak, and behind the curtains, they're trying to figure it out like a lot of other people in this room. But if you pare down the scope, you have a much better chance of making this thing work than trying to come at it from trying to solve the world for your organization.
Right, Kevin, that's exactly the kind of early signals that often leaders tend to overlook. So thank you. Freddy, what criteria do you use to tell if customizing the model will create business value or if it's just going to burn the budget with no return?
I think the first step, it's similar to what Kevin was saying. For us, a big red flag is when there's commitment in terms of, let's get the ball rolling. I want to do this. I need to do this. Exactly. But what really complements that part, and you must have it so that you are sure that you're going down the right path, is, are you willing to bet the house on, right? And it goes to the upper levels. I agree 100% with that, because you have to be able to really have that be a big part of your bet for that year period, etc., because that will make sure that decisions going from that point and downwards are also tied to the business value. That is critical. And only with that driver, in our experience, is that you see that the right problem is detected, that it's a problem, that it's measured, that you know how hard is hitting you right now, what type of pain you're suffering, how much it's costing you, and then you're on the right track. That's the first part. And to simplify it, going and skipping over to the solution piece, right? Whether you have the right solution, whether it's fine-tuning or augmenting or retrieving data, the really important part is with that baseline is you will make the right decision to not have it be more expensive than it has to be. No, I mean, it doesn't mean, what I meant is if you bet the house on it, it doesn't mean you have to spend a crazy amount of money to get it done, right? You should really bet it and make sure that the solution is the right type of solution for us. And nowadays, with the experience that we've had with our customers, modularity, it's critical. You usually, in most cases, don't have to have a monolithic, big solution, big long-term commitment to get an ROI. It has been better, and I think will continue to be better, at least in the short term, to build a solution that is composed of these modules, whether it's prompts, whether it's data, and maybe a little bit of fine-tuning, but at least you should know that any of those pieces can be replaced. And with that, and because that is a requisite, right? With the pace at which AI solutions and capabilities are changing right now, even on a weekly basis sometimes, you have to be able to swap things. So you get performance with that in mind, with modularity and business value commitment in mind. You don't build performance because you spend a ton of money and you spend 3 months perfecting your solution.
I see. Clear and actionable decision criteria, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Love that. Kayla, what's the one moment in your career where a customized model created more compliance overhead than the scientific value? And what was the lesson that you have learned out of it?
Yeah, definitely. So the customization shows up a risk when we start to move from a machine just executing an existing process to the machine making the final decision. So, for example, in a traditional machine learning setup, usually we have a list of input data. We train the machine, we get the output, then on the top of that, we add some business rules so we can drive the final decision. So in a scenario like this, the layers of work are very transparent. So it's easy to go and do verification, evaluation, everything is easy. Which is not the case when we have a customization for machine to make the decision. So in a scenario like this, the evaluation is complicated. We need to challenge the model more because again, this is a final decision to replace the human. The monitoring could be very expensive, so it's very, very challenging. So one thing that I learned from the experience like this is always link this type of customization to the business impact and only move with this solution if the business impact is significant enough to actually justify this added compliance and also the costs or the added governance, and the cost of compliance.
I see. Perfect example. So, Lana, what's the most difficult disagreement that you had to resolve about what models should do and should not?
I would say it's, as I mentioned, because when you're dealing kind of, again, with enterprise tools or solutions that are built for enterprise scale, you are going to have a lot of disagreements, even within the actual, teams. You may have disagreements. So it's actually coming down to a consensus and then getting agreements. And I'm a big believer in data-driven decisions. So what data is this model moving, and can we get a consensus as to what we need to move forward and what decisions will actually move that needle towards that business outcome? One other thing that I would say, like, to make it maybe even more concrete, but when we're switching, let's say, Gen AI models, one thing that is maybe not enough stated, if you're kind of switching family of models, you're kind of landing in in a completely different engineering challenge, because you're not just swapping one modular component, you could be swapping multiple custom components. And so sometimes there is a preference, or some provider, or maybe someone really likes one model versus another that's like the engine behind it. And, we have to kind of communicate why, we're making certain decisions. So again, when we stay within, there's enough changes happening within the family of the same models, I would say, with things like the GPTs, the Geminis, that require a lot of engineering effort to actually even switch versions and optimize for that specific output. And it's a completely different challenge when you're switching families of models. So I would say sometimes we've encountered where, with Gen AI specifically, you see a lot of movement right now in the models, the versioning, preferences are switching. And then, of course, you may have something like DeepSeek come on the radar, and then that just kind of flips, everything upside down. So you may have those things. So you have to kind of stay grounded. You have to kind of keep things to reality, and then really paint the holistic picture, again, data-driven decisions as to what is the impact of whether, going with one model versus another, and how much does it make sense business-wise versus, how much of it is more cushy around the edges. So you do have to kind of anchor yourselves into something that's more concrete that can drive better some of those decisions.
Great insights. Those value-based tensions are often tougher, right, than the technical ones. Yujing, so where have you seen engineering teams forced to clean up the mess because a customized model was not built with maintainability in mind?
Yeah, for that question, I want to echo one of Lana's point. Different model family actually behaves very differently. And when engineering team want to fine tune under one specific family, then later on figure out there's a better one out there, they're usually forced to clean up a lot of mess just to switch model family. This is not because the old model family isn't good enough. It's sometimes because how they prepare the data itself and how they structured the fine-tuning infrastructure around them. For example, they're using a specific type of framework in order to fine-tune it, and later on figure out the new model family is, for example, specializing in another framework. Then they have to clean up everything, do the migration, modify the data a little bit if needed, and this is actually a lot of mess in between. But from a business perspective, it's also needed because, yes, the second family might be able to provide a better performance or provide a better ROI when it comes to cost. So this is needed. One of the recommendation or suggestion I would say from an engineering perspective is have a clear separation between a data engineering and training framework. So whenever there is a better model out there, you can switch to it with minimum effort. And because you have good abstraction on both layers, you don't need to worry too much about hard dependencies either on the data side or the training infrastructure side. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Yujing. So, well, we are on time. Before we close, I would love to leave the audience with one strong insight from each of you, something that they can carry in 2026 and beyond when they choose the customization strategy. So in one sentence, what guiding principle should organization follow when deciding whether to, fine-tune or engineer the model, or start from the scratch, or maybe just avoid the customizations entirely? Yeah, you can start.
I can go first. So I think it's to start with this simple question. I have this use case. I am able to achieve what I'm looking for through simple prompt engineering and a simple machine learning model. If the answer is yes, we don't need to go with the customization. If the answer is no, of course, then we need to ask more questions about, okay, do we have enough data? But it's always going to be the second maybe solution is customization. And then we go with the full, or maybe starting from scratch, only if the business impact is really significant. And there is no existing solution or LLM that exists that we can actually use it for the same use case.
Beautifully explained. Thank you. How about you, Lana?
So I would say, I think one of the things, just not just about generative AI, just AI in general, what basically we've all been sold is, the scale and personalization. So in order to achieve that scale, you do need to lean into customizations at some level, especially if you're, again, I come from more in the enterprise world. You kind of have two different stakeholders you're delivering value to, in this case, the users and then the business. So how can you deliver that scale that your users have been promised with, if this is an AI solution, immediately they're thinking, oh, this is going to drive scale and that Netflix type of custom experiences, everyone kind of gets their own version of it. You're seeing it right now, and I would say ChatGPT and Claude, they're having now memories, and so each agent feels like their own. Those are the expectations right now in the market that, you're doing AI, I'm expecting that level of customization. I'm expecting that level of, I would say, customized type of an experience that I'm receiving. But you have to do that in a way that makes business sense as well. So you can't have millions of versions of these models. So you kind of have to invest the time to think smarter architecture. How can you make it? How can you deliver on some of those expectations? Because if the expectations are not met, this is where the adoption will start to go down. So you want to make sure that you kind of don't underestimate the expectations that the industries have been setting for what customization means to the end users, and this could be B2C or B2B. But also, you need to make sure that you're meeting the business kind of targets, and you're making the business side make sense as well from an ROI standpoint.
Clear and compelling. Appreciate that, Kevin.
Yeah, I think what's the problem you're trying to solve? I'm going to keep going back to that. Going into next year, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and what are the resources that you have to solve it, right? Try to solve it with as little data as possible, unless you know this is a big data problem going into it. And you'll know that, like, okay, you have a large data science team, you go to them and they have a problem, and they're going to come back to you and be like, yeah, you're going to need to find, like, we have a lot of jargon, we have a lot of this, we have a lot of that. They're going to know. But if you're in an organization that you don't have that data science team, like, literally on your hip telling you, like, yeah, this is a fine-tuned problem, you probably don't need to start with fine-tuning. You need to start with a defined business case. You need to start with your engineering team, how to figure it out. There's a reason why you're trying to customize this AI in-house. You're either building a product for yourself, you're building a solution that's internally IP protected for your organization. You're not buying agents off the shelf for some other reason. And then you want to control the information that's going in, and you want to have a way to measure how well that's doing. And I think that's one of the bigger missing pieces to the pie. Measurement is not someone eyeballing it, sticking their finger in the air and going, yeah, most of the outputs look good today. Let's wait till tomorrow and see what happens, right? Like, what are you using to measure? And there's a lot of tools out there, and I can, go on about Meibel nonstop. You can stop by the booth after that for that. But that's one thing we talk about people a lot. It's like, how are you measuring what you're doing? How do you know that your data is actually being used? And how do you actually narrow the scope of what you're doing? Think about that, because there's a lot of people out there telling you to not do that. There's a lot of people telling you, just connect all your data, and then we'll worry about the AI piece. I personally think that's the exact wrong way to do it. Start small, layer on top of things. Start with an LLM, then go to RAG, then go to vector databases, then start layering things on, then get to the point where you need to fine tune. Unless in your hip pocket you have that expert data science team and you have these people who already know AI, you probably want to take a more measured approach to this. And don't be worried about being left behind. You're not behind. A lot of people are trying to figure this thing out. You just going through this process, you're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of other people who are trying to do the same thing.
Excellent takeaway. Freddy, what your lens says?
I'll go back to the first point being the business objective. You need to have a clear objective, whether it's more sales, savings, anything. It has to be a business metric that you're shooting for. That's number one, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're tuning or just engineering. You have to have that clear objective. It cannot be just a training or experiment that you're running. While you are well on to, good to do that, right? But if you're trying to bring value, that needs to be the first item. The second one I would like to leave you with is build modular, build smaller pieces that come together iteratively, iterate fast, right? You have, because I mean, you're seeing, I don't have to tell you the news and everything that's advancing every week, every month. So you have to be able to iterate fast. That means you have to build smaller pieces. That's something that you really need to think about. And last, I think a key word here also that I want to leave you with is disposability. You need to be willing, able, and actually planning to get rid of what you built in a few months. It's still right now, it's going to be something that you have to live with. So start by knowing that you will get rid of what you did and build something better, integrate some other model different from what you thought or what was actually best when you got started, right? That's it for me.
Great
Thank you.
principle. Thank you. How about you, Yujing?
So I will say from an engineering perspective, before everyone start asking themselves the question of should we using fine tune, we need to make sure we already have a prototype in place ready. Then the question will go into two dimensions. First is, are you shooting for accuracy or are you shooting for cost, right? If you're shooting for accuracy, the second question to ask is, will the model you use get better in, for example, 3 to 6 months? If it is, the next question is it worth it for you to do fine tune? Or maybe in today's era, we should ask, is it worth it to do post-training? For example, should we use reinforcement learning to improve the accuracy? Sometimes it is. If it's a very niche domain or a special workflow that you know will not be covered by those proprietary large model company like OpenAI or Anthropic, then it is a go, right? If it's cost you're looking for on the other dimension, that usually means your prototype will solve at least 99% of the work, and the only reason you're hesitated to continue using it is because of the cost. Then you should ask yourself a similar question. Will the cost drop to a certain point in 3 to 6 months where your fine-tuned smaller model will overprice it, right? Sometimes this is really hard to predict, but if you look at the actual pricing chart on either OpenRouter or any mass platform like us, you should be able to see the trend of inference cost in 3 to 6 months, right? You should see a clear direction that the inferencing cost will go down. But by how much is the matter you should worry about, right? We know a lot of, for example, in a very unique case of data engineering or data cleaning, people use smaller model, fine-tune smaller models to do a first round of data cleaning where they build a prototype using a much bigger proprietary model, right? Because they know even the proprietary model or the bigger model price got dropped in 3 to 6 months, the smaller model is still costs only a fraction of the cost comparing to the bigger ones. So that means a clear goal if they want to go for a fine-tune or a reinforcement learning approach. Yeah, so I would say having a prototype, look at the 2 dimensions, and then you will have a clear answer.
Great insight, Yujing. Thank you. That was very helpful. So as we close today, one thing stands out very clear, that customization is not automatically upgrade. It's a strategic decision that comes with long-term consequences. It could be financial, regulatory, or even compliance related, right? So fine-tuning works only when the data is mature and governance are ready. You can start from the scratch, and that may simplify, but it comes with a lot of demands in terms of the clarity it needs and commitment requires, and a lot of resources, right? And engineering would only work if your model supports the architecture. And sometimes the smartest decision is just to walk away from the customization and probably wait, right? So thank you so much to our incredible panel, and thank you so much to all of you to join this discussion today. Enjoy the rest of the summit.